Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Metal Magdalene with Jet right here on Metal Messiah Radio. We are officially into summer now, and it looks like the season on the Metal Magdalene is gearing up to be a summer of drummers. And with us right now, we have drummer Alex Cohen. Welcome to the show, Alex.
Hey, thank you for having me.
So first of all, Alex, earlier this year you played with Malignancy in Iceland. What was that experience like for you?
Well, cold and rainy, but Iceland was a great country. It was really cool to see the Blue Lagoon. Reykjavik is a great town, and being able to go there and just experience the country and see some culture and play a great show, especially because the Death Fest had some bands that I really like on it, such as Dodecahedron, Psychroptic, bands like that, and there were other bands I hadn't heard of that were just really awesome. So the whole experience was really great. Plus the flights over there, the movies are unedited, so you actually get to watch the real movie rather than something where all like a bunch of footage is cut out and the curse words would be. So that was really nice as well.
So Alex, getting into your drumming career a little bit, how old were you when you first started to get interested in drums?
I was 12 years old.
And was this something that your parents supported?
I think my parents supported anything that I would be into that might get me bullied slightly less when I was a kid. So, yes, they did support it. And it was actually a central event. Shout out to Lev Weinstein from Krallis. I saw him play The Who's Tommy at the middle school I was in. He was in high school at the time. And the crowd was just cheering him on and loving it. And he took this drum solo. And I just watched that. And I thought, damn, I want to be cool like Lev. I want to play drums and be accepted like that. And so the rest is history.
And so, Alex, was this kind of like a therapy for you then, too, as well? I mean, like you said, if you had trouble in school, you could always come home and your drums are sitting there waiting for you.
Oh, exactly. It ended up really being, even at the ages of 13, 14, and so on through my teenage years, I practiced a lot. I would come home and play along to records, and I started taking lessons, both from the teacher at school, his name was Mr. Latsky, and from Fred Klatz at Drummers Collective.
So what was your first kit, Alex?
It was if you would count drum pads as kits, it was a Casio drum pad. It was basically a toy, and I wrecked two of them before my parents finally got me a low-line Roland electronic kit to get started with.
And now, what drummers throughout your life have been like some of your inspirations?
Well, probably the first drummer that really inspired me, I guess my first real influence was Travis Barker from Blink-182, because that was what kids were listening to at the time. And, that was just, my first thing was Travis and Enema of the State and Take Off Your Pants and Jacket. Like, it was kind of puerile first albums. And then I got into stuff like Meshuggah. So Thomas Hock was a big influence. Planet X, Virgil Donati was huge influence on me. And then stuff like Dave Weckl, the Mahavishnu Orchestra, Weather Report. At the same time, I was listening to a lot of Slayer, so Dave Lombardo, Paul Bostaph, Pantera, Vinnie Paul, Snot, Jamie Miller. I'll stand by. There was some good material on those records. And Dimmu Borgir with Nick Barker. That was a huge one, for sure. And also Origin, Informis Infinitas with John Longstreth. Nick and John were two of my huge metal influences.
So what was the first show, besides the one at your middle school, Alex, that you went to where the drummer really blew you away?
I was fortunate enough to go to the Iridium when I was in 9th grade, or 8th grade, I should say. And we went there. It was Mike Stern playing with Dennis Chambers on drums, and the guy at the door said, "I'm sorry, but we only have one seat left." And that seat was right next to the drum set. So I got to watch Dennis play the whole night, and it just blew my mind.
No, are you still with Pyrexia?
I am, yes.
And so what have you been doing, as far as they go, and what are some of the other bands and projects you've been working with, Alex?
Okay, well, so Pyrexia is currently getting ready to release an album and do a bunch of touring, it looks like, in the fall. So I've got to prepare for that. I mean, I'll be ready for that. But in the meantime, I'll be going to the West Coast in July with End Time Illusion, which is a sort of more melodic death metal band from Massachusetts. Then I'm going to Chicago to play Chicago Domination Fest with Abuse, subbing in for Mike Caputo because he will be on tour with Rings of Saturn at the time. Then I come back and I'm playing with this band Horribly Right out in Long Island. And then I go to Canada with Malignancy. And before that, I have a bunch of freelance gigs and recording sessions that I have to do. So and then I think in August I'll be going to Sweden and Norway with Vajra again. So it's quite a bit of traveling and playing.
It'll keep you out of trouble, Alex, a little bit.
I try and keep it together when I'm on the road. I try and be composed and mature and, not crazy.
So, Alex, throughout your career, what was your biggest wow moment for you on drums?
Well, there were... Okay, for... my biggest wow moment was probably the first Malignancy tour that we did in Europe. And not for the, wow, this is great, more for the, wow, this is awful. And the reason is I got over there, and at the time I was cocky. I really thought I knew what I was doing. I thought, this is my moment. I'm going to show everyone what's up. And I got over there, and every drummer played circles around me. Everybody could blast faster, could play more power, knew their material better, especially with Patrice Hamlin, who was playing in Cephalic Carnage at the time. He was one of the guys that just absolutely floored me. And every night, I would just sit at the side of the stage, not even knowing what to say or what to do. And I kind of flew back home from that tour, basically wondering if I even wanted to continue playing drums, because I had just literally had the floor wiped up with me for about a month straight. And a friend of mine, this guy named Chris Kelly, who plays bass, and he and I do gigs together. And Chris will tell you I was a very different person when I came back from that tour.
Humbled you a little bit, Alex?
Oh, that's the understatement of the year.
Well, hopefully, as you got a little bit older, you grew some inspiration from this to, practice and stay on your game and,
Well, there was the second Malignancy tour, which was also a big wow moment in the same fashion. And that was, we did a tour in America with Dying Fetus and Cerebral Bore. And Dying Fetus with Trey Williams absolutely blew me off the stage every night. And that was the tour when Danny and Ronnie, in their infinite wisdom, said, okay, man, step it up or this isn't going to work. I'm honestly amazed they even kept me on the gig. But, the rest is history. And currently, we're very happy with it. So I stepped it up for sure. And I certainly practice a lot and try and maintain my chops and improve at the same time. But those two tours were pretty soul-wrenching.
So what kind of kit do you currently use, Alex?
Live, I use a Tama Star Classic Babinga Birch kit. But a lot of the time, I'll also just use the backline or something another drummer has, because carrying drums is a lot of work, and whatever makes transitions between sets easier. But I use in my recording studio that I use a Sakai Celestial Series kit, which was custom built for Jonathan Mover, the great drummer, owner of Drumhead Magazine. And he was kind enough to store that kit in the studio. And I never played better drums than this. It is the kit of a lifetime.
So what is your current setup then on that kit?
It is 1 8-inch tom, 12-inch, and 8, 10, 12 rack toms, 14 and 16 floor toms, a 20-inch kick, a 14-inch main snare. It is a Babinga snare drum, and then a 14-inch auxiliary snare drum, which is stainless steel.
Now, Alex, what kind of grip do you use when playing, and what are some common mistakes among beginners when it comes to grip?
I use two different techniques, the finger control technique and the molar technique. Now, what the finger control does is lets me play very, very fast, but with a lot of precision, and I feel that it really creates a smooth, very articulate sound. So that's actually primarily with thumbs up on the stick, or on top. So that would be French grip, more or less. And then the molar technique, I flip my wrist over and use the bicep and the larger muscles to produce an accent, because the fingers they really can't produce accents with them. And that helps me alleviate stress on certain muscle groups. And I find that a big mistake beginner drummers make is trying to go too fast at first and not developing the proper technique for both health maintenance as well as consistency, sound, and most importantly, timing.
So, Alex, explain the art of the blast beat, the different styles, and what kind of music this beat enhances.
Well, the first blast beat was done by Art Blakey and Buddy Rich in traditional jazz, and then was furthered by Tony Williams with his own bands, and I think even with Miles Davis. So don't quote me on that, but the first blasts were done by jazz drummers, so it can therefore, I guess, enhance jazz music. And then the traditional blast was first done by Pete Sandoval. Well, it was Mick Harris who did it in Napalm Death on Scum first, and other grind and punk drummers. But putting it in time for the first time, it was Pete Sandoval, and then guys like Derek Roddy, Mike Smith, Dave Culross, guys like that who brought it into more mainstream metal and more technical death metal. But I really think the blast beat can honestly enhance far more than people know as an energetic texture in free jazz, as a form of aggression in other forms of music, just to make an emotional statement or something like that. And it's really a great tool to have. And I think that the blast and its variations are really something to really kind of treasure in modern music that way, and I think they're very important to learn.
So what are some of the different variations of blast beats, Alex?
Well, you have your traditional, which is just a straight single stroke roll with the hands, with either one foot lining up with your right hand or your left hand, and or you could split it between 2 feet, which people call the Euro blast or Econo blast. Then there is the unison blast or the Suffo blast, which was done with the limbs in unison, being it right foot or right and left alternating, same thing. Then there is what's called the bomb blast, which is 16 notes in the double bass with both hands together. And those were the standard ones. Then you started getting into stuff like the gravity blast, which utilizes the one-handed roll that John Longstreth came up with. And then John actually also came up with various rudimental phrases within the blast, so using flam rudiments to go to the cymbals and provide a little respite rather than playing at just 300 BPM the whole time. And then guys such as, I guess I use some of this in Malignancy, and Marco Petruzella does some of this too, using various stickings and flams to play at extremely fast tempos, such as 340, 350 BPM, and imitate the sound of a blast. So if that's cheating, cool, but I didn't start playing metal to follow rules. I always thought we broke the rules.
So what foot technique do you use, Alex?
I use primarily two different foot techniques. I use a double stroke technique that I based off of Virgil Donati's double ankle tap and John Bonham's slide technique that was pioneered a lot in the 70s. And then I use the fairly standard heel up technique, but with the ball of the foot planted on the pedal, the toes turned up, and utilizing the heel as almost a counterbalance activated by the calf muscles. And that's where I got my singles from. And then my doubles, I get it from the double technique I've developed. And that way I can actually play rudiments in my feet, and I can play a lot of very fast controlled patterns and get a lot of power and articulation, such as I can do it without triggers and it can be heard.
So what are some simple foot exercises one can do to not only build up speed and endurance, but to also avoid injury?
Well, one thing I do is when I'm on the train or at home working on something, I'll mimic the double stroke technique in my foot. So I'll do toe and then full foot, so sliding my foot forward. And I'll do that in both feet to build the muscles up with that technique. And another thing, I go to the gym and do a workout routine. So I do a lot of stationary bike and leg presses and stuff like that to keep and also core strength exercises to keep my core strong, because double bass comes from your waist and hip flexors, and you need a strong core to hold your body in place and use your legs and feet and really your ankles as well that way.
So also, Alex, when people transition from single bass to double bass, what are some things they can do to make this process a little smoother?
No, not kidding here. Turn your kit around and play a left-handed drum set. Dead serious. That'll work your hands, your independence. It'll challenge you to come up with new phrases. Yes, you're going to sound like a total amateur. I get it, but that's what practice is for. And that's going to help build up your left foot.
Now, like with any instrument, the key to learning and furthering your knowledge, of course, on your kit is practice, practice, practice. How much stress would you put on a student to learn their rudiments and paradiddles and all that stuff is, as you do, them faster and faster? Is this a good way to learn speed throughout your entire kit?
Oh, absolutely. So the way that I usually describe this to my students is I can be nice and you'll learn. You'll get something out. Or I can be a total hard ass and you're going to learn a lot very fast. But this is boot camp. And I think that practice, especially proper hand technique, is essential. And the rudiments are your scales of drumming. They should be learned, they should be mastered, and they should be second nature.
I was going to say, too, that a lot of new drummers are obsessed with speed without even knowing much about how to play their way around a kit. I mean, would you suggest to beginners to take a few lessons or even watch some YouTube lessons when first starting out?
I would say articulation and consistency and timing before speed. With control comes speed, not the other way around.
And to trigger or not to trigger is the question. When is a good time to trigger your drums, and when should you be a little more natural?
Well, I trigger live just because a lot of times the kicks can't be heard through a wall of guitars. But there have been times when my triggers have not worked or there hasn't been a module, and you know what? You can still hear my kicks decently well because I kick hard, I've got good technique, and I can project the kicks. In the studio, I actually don't trigger, and I let the engineer do that in post-production, because for me, my goal as a recording drummer was to be able to sound as close to being triggered as possible without being triggered, or sound replaced at the time. And I feel that's been a strength of mine and something that I've really worked to develop, and it's helped me as a musician and a songwriter, at least for drum parts. And it's really pushed me to develop technique and a solid foundation on the drum set.
Now, I just want to mention that Alex is part of the Sick Drummer magazine staff, and you can learn more tips and lessons from Alex via video demos on that page. And Alex, tell people where they can find you on YouTube as well as other sites to see what you're up to and the little lessons and stuff like that that you post.
Oh, well, you can find me on pretty much any of the major drum forums on Facebook, be it Drum Secrets or Metal Drummer Nerds Worldwide. Drummers, and my page is Alex Cohen Drums NYC, and I think that's on YouTube. I don't use YouTube quite as much. I probably should more. You can find Sick Drummer videos of me on YouTube, though. And I am just Alex Cohen with the drumsticks. I'm holding a pair of drumsticks in front of my face on Facebook, so you can check my personal profile or my artist page, which is Alex Cohen Drums. And then, I mean, you'll find me. I always post tons and tons of those videos. I know a lot of people that I'm very humbled by some of the people who watch those and work on them. And I gotta say, I practically made my career just posting videos with an iPhone on Facebook. So please, any of those sites, check out my videos. I'd love, and I'd love for them to help more people, because it's been amazing seeing how people, have been inspired by them.
So Alex, are you still open for things like session work and live work and lessons and that kind of thing?
Oh, absolutely. Always. Hey, recording drums, playing drums, teaching drums, this is how I pay my bills. So I'm always open for that.
So if people want to contact you for any of those things, where would they do that?
Alex Cohen, AlexCohen NYC @gmail.com. So Alex Cohen NYC, all one word, @gmail.com.
So, I'm sure we could talk drums all day long, but for now, there you guys go. Drummer Alex Cohen. You can check more lessons and exercises to help you with your drumming experience on the Sick Drummer magazine page, as well as some of the other sites that we had mentioned. And Alex, thank you for coming on the show to tell us a little bit about yourself and sharing some great information with our drummer friends tonight.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's an honor and always a privilege to talk with people from Sick Drummer.